What about clustering? Well, clustering I think is very, very interesting, right? And you are 100% going to come across clustering in your, in your work. So clustering asks a basic question, right? What are the observations in our data that are unique? Right? What are the general observations in our data that are unique? And then what are the observations of those unique ones that are close together, right? That's basically like the definition of a cluster, right? A cluster overall is unique, but then the data points within each cluster are similar to each other, right? Otherwise they wouldn't be in the same cluster. So basically we're talking about segments, right? Each cluster represents a segment in our data. So I mentioned segments because that's also beneficial to think about from like a marketing perspective, right? Or like a customer segmentation perspective, or a sales perspective, right? Because you guys know I always emphasize the business side of everything we do, right? So, it's kind of important to think of it in those terms also. Because you don't want to talk to your stakeholders about clusters and your centroids, and you want to talk about the market segments of your customers, right? So that's why I also mentioned that. So in this chapter, the authors choose to focus on k-means, which I think is great. K-means is definitely the most common factor algorithm that you'll come across, right? Because k-means is pretty powerful for just about every instance out there of data. You'll find others. There's other clustering approaches, but k-means, is going to get you pretty far for most of the things that you need to do. Okay. And I also want to emphasize, don't get k-means confused with nearest neighbors. Because if you guys remember, if you were here for that class, we saw nearest neighbors when we were talking about some of the beyond regression methods, right? Nearest neighbors only works for supervised data. K-means is primarily used for unsupervised data, okay? So very similar names, right? They both focus on centroids, in the centers of those clusters. But k-means is what we'll be focusing and what you'll use in unsupervised data scenarios.